Oh, 2015. I think we can all agree that it's been a pretty damn fine year for the old video games. Very good, in fact. A lot of good games pushed back, but that doesn't necessarily matter quite so much. Strongest year we've had for quite a while. I think we can all agree there. This list, of course, is totally subjective, as all lists of the top 10 whatever are. This is just my personal list. There's games that probably should be on here, but I maybe haven't had the chance to play or complete in its entirety. You know, it's just a list at the end of the day, and pointless really, because you're all gamers, and gamers, as we know, are the most egotistical, patronising, sycophantic sons of bitches on the face of the earth. I bet you aren't even watching this with an open mind, are you sick sons of bitches? You fucking useless. Wait, no. Fuck it, just carry on anyway.
In your side is pleasure, boom, cheap pleasure.
Ooh, controversial, right? Not really, no. Fallout 4 is an excellent game, that's why it's made its way onto my top 10 best games of the year. A year where we've had plenty of excellent games, so yeah. Fallout 4 is awesome. I booked a week off for its release and literally spent every day of that week immersed in the fantastic post-apocalyptic world of Boston, where the game is set. Bethesda's strongest trait as a developer has always been their literal world building, and Fallout 4 is a testament to that. The world is, above all else, believable. You can tell that every inch of its vast open world has been painstakingly tinkered with until every inch of it has been perfected, within reason of course. Most people have said that it's just Fallout 3.5, and yeah, they're exactly right. This is essentially just a more refined version of Fallout 3. The shooting actually feels satisfying now, the perk system is far more accessible without sacrificing depth, the writing is better overall, and there are some interesting characters. But there are a few things that really bugged me, and yes, that was a pun. For a start, I've always preferred Bethesda's Elder Scrolls series to Fallout because I find the world as a whole more exciting and diverse. As I so intelligently equipped, there are bugs aplenty, and I'm not going to give Bethesda a free pass on that. The game hard crashed on me several times, and there were many gameplay bugs which led to my character dying on several occasions. I also think it's time for them to develop a new engine. I've noticed a few bugs that have been present in every Bethesda game since Oblivion, and it's evident that it's just down to the engine. Character animation is decent, but when compared with something like The Witcher 3, it's clear that Bethesda need to up their game a bit. Though I may seem largely negative, I still think Fallout 4 overall is a phenomenal achievement and a truly engaging RPG. If you're in any way a fan of Bethesda, and what they've done in the past, you should check this mother out. You don't need me to tell you how good Rocket League is. If you do, then you're a fool. A fool who either hasn't played it, or is just a twat. A twat who doesn't know anything about anything. Masturbating in your own filth is probably the only pleasure you can attain, without clubbing some poor stranger's head in, and then burying them in the back garden of your mother's house where you still live, even though you're of that age where it's a little bit weird to be there. You sick fuck. Seriously though, Rocket League is a testament to that specific type of excellency that can only be found in simple design. The beauty of Rocket League is that it's so easy to learn and yet incredibly difficult to master. The simple yet astonishingly deep control scheme means that the only divide between you and those on the opposing team is pure skill. No bullshit items, no optimal skill setups, just pure mastery of its controls. I'm bad at the game, like seriously bad. I'm so bad that to save face when playing with friends, I purposefully score own goals just to take the edge off it all. Yeah. But it doesn't matter, because it's just fun. It's fun to watch players fuck up, it's fun to try and fail to do the skill shots off the walls, it's fun to score own goals, it's fun to blow the opposing team up. It's all just so much fun. And because it's fun and because it's so easy to learn the fundamentals, it's become more popular than I think even the developers could have ever hoped for. It's a game that I'm just so happy for because it deserves all the success it gets. Fucking good on you, Psyonix. There's two aspects of writing that instantly grab me in a game. They're essentially what I look for in character and plot development in every medium: subtlety and charm. King's Quest has the latter in buckets. There were so many cute little moments in the game that I can't actually remember an instance where I didn't have a punch-drunk smile on my face and a song in my heart. Not only is it absolutely delightful, it's also incredibly engaging. Puzzles aren't so ball-achingly cryptic as its predecessors appear to be, and yet not so easy or throwaway as Telltale's so often are. Its characters are all likeable in their own way, and the voice acting is absolutely stellar. There's not much more to say about it really. I've never played the Monkey Island games. A sin, I know, but I feel that this will suffice as the modern day equivalent for me, providing that the other episodes are as good, of course. Yeah, I know this shouldn't really be on the list, but who cares? I wanted to talk about it, and it's a damn fine first entry. It feels like I've written countless things on my blog about how Telltale's reputation as the darlings of the modern point-and-click game is starting to fade. And yet... Tales from the Borderlands is an astoundingly good game. I'm a big fan of the Borderlands series to begin with, and always believed that there was more to the lore than what Gearbox was letting on. Tales from the Borderlands out and out proves this. The plot is never anything less than totally engaging, with some fun little twists and turns to be had along the way. All the characters are entirely likeable and have incredibly solid arcs throughout. It's genuinely funny too. A lot of people find the traditional Borderlands humour a little jockish and trashy, but because of the quality of the writing is so good here, the jokes stick and they genuinely made me chuckle throughout every episode. Whilst it doesn't stray too far from the established and somewhat tired Telltale formula in terms of gameplay, it'll play off what you've come to expect from them. To give any specific examples of this would be an outright spoiler, but if you've played it, I'm sure you'll know what it is I'm trying to get at. That's all I have to say about it really. Aside from this year's Game of Thrones tie-in, I've loved everything Telltale has done since The Walking Dead Season 1, and cannot wait for next year's Batman game. So long as they keep writing excellent scripts for characters with good arcs, I'm in for eternity. Also, this game has the best sequence involving quick-time events you'll probably ever play. Just saying. I have a rather interesting relationship with FromSoft's games. The original Dark Souls is one of my favourite games of all time, and is still my pick for some of the best level and enemy design in any game ever. And yet, despite this, I've never really enjoyed playing it, or any of the Souls games for that matter. Not in the conventional fun sense at least. I could marvel at its fantastic art direction, its beautifully complex level building, its punishing, agonisingly satisfying way that it teaches you its systems, but I've never actually enjoyed my time with any of them, and that's not necessarily a dig. I feel very much the same way about Bloodborne, except more so. Where in Dark Souls you have the ability to turtle up behind a massive shield and heavy suit of armour, in Bloodborne no such choice exists. There is a mechanic in Bloodborne whereby once you're hit, you have a brief window of opportunity to regain some of the lost health by retaliating against your enemy. This completely changes everything. You now rely purely upon speed and reaction times to win fights. Imagine the best dex build you've ever seen in the Souls series, times it by 10 and you'll have what it's like here. It's a beautiful system for the most part, encounters now feeling more like a dance than anything else. You have to play off your enemies, observe every move they make and seek that briefest of windows where you can parry them with a gunshot and move in for a powerful visceral attack. Therein lies the problem, not so much concentration, it's more an acute sense of hyper-being. I cannot relax, and I know that's the point, but I never feel lost in these wonderful worlds From Software creates. I feel like I'm on holiday in Sri Lanka, on one of those beautifully remote islands, if they were in the midst of a Lovecraftian Gothic-themed holiday, but at any moment I might have to fight a crazed lunatic with a knife. I understand entirely that this is just a me thing, and in no way the fault of the games. It's still excellent, hence why it's so high on the list. And I know this all seems largely negative, but okay, all the reasons why people like Dark Souls, that's why Bloodborne is so good, and more. It's undoubtedly one of the best games of the year, but doesn't quite do enough differently to what From has offered previously in order to edge itself up to a higher position. Sorry Dan, you can fanboy spaz at me later. The Arkham Knight has been largely forgotten about, and to be honest, I think that's more a testament to the overall quality of games released this year than it is a comment on how good Rocksteady's swan song to their franchise really is. Thankfully, I didn't play it on PC, so I was able to dodge the myriad of technical issues that particular platform had to endure, and I have to say that it's tied with the original as my favourite of the series. Where Asylum's level design is wonderfully tight and focused, I feel as though its predecessors lost that by going open world. In many ways, this is just Arkham City with a car, but I find City's plot just average. It was passable. Only that, really. This is where Arkham Knight shines. I won't give too much away, but I found the majority of the game's story absolutely tremendous, and some of the best writing I've seen in a game this year. Sure, the game's namesake character is totally negligible for the most part, and is only really there to give credence to the presence of the Batmobile, but it's what happens with the other guys that's so important. Rocksteady polishing a formula that was already pretty shiny to begin with, in what is easily the best CQC in any game ever. The Batmobile, whilst feeling a little negligible at times, still adds that extra something to the game, and swooping into it from a great height is one of the coolest things I've ever experienced in a video game. Just brilliant. An almost perfect end to an excellent franchise. Well done, Rocksteady. You know, I kinda like David Cage. Not his games, obviously, I'm not a stupid cunt. No, I like the fact that he exists. He thinks he's an auteur, and to a degree, he sort of is. Again, his games are boring as shit for the most part. Poorly designed, poorly written, emotionally bloated clusterfucks. But he's proved to the world that the supposed concrete formula for the big AAA game development is in fact quite malleable. Until Dawn is what would happen if David Cage was given a shit ton of Adderall and administered with a short, sharp smack whenever he uttered, "Hey, here's an idea." It's a game that I initially hated, partly because it seemed full of cheap jump scares, and partly because the characters seemed, well, unoriginal and tropey as fuck, to be totally honest. But then I realised that's the point. It's a parody of itself and the teen slasher movies it so heavily borrows from. It plays out exactly as you'd imagine these scenarios would. Don't split up, you idiots. Don't investigate the sounds, you fucking moron. Stop shouting, you loud-mouthed bitch. But despite these things being incredibly predictable, it still remains compelling throughout. You learn fairly early on that decisions in-game genuinely have consequences, and as a result you're always left wondering what effects killing a bird, for instance, might have on later events. Simultaneously, you feel like the writer, director and viewer of the year's latest summer horror flick, rather than just the player. I found myself on a number of occasions trying to kill off characters I didn't like, whilst keeping the ones I did alive and well. This sometimes doesn't work even if you know every horror cliché in the book. The game can still surprise you. To round this off, I picked Until Dawn for this particular spot because it surprised the fuck out of me. Not only was it a game that delivered on its promise of a really cool choice and consequence system, but it has character arcs that are genuinely well put together, a story that takes some really interesting turns, and sound and visual design that blew my fucking mind. Bring on a rush of blood. The Witcher 3, like pretty much any open world RPG, is by no means perfect. I find the combat a little unrefined, the talent tree a little boring, and the crafting systems needlessly complicated. But you cannot deny that it's one of the most immersive RPGs ever made. CD Projekt Red are now one of the most prolific and respected developers in the industry, and the sheer quality and level of craftsmanship are evidence of that in every nook and cranny of The Witcher 3. For a start, I played through the game on a PS4, and it's got to be in the running for the best looking next-gen title out there, and to a certain extent it probably is. The art direction is wonderful, and the general aesthetic of the game is nothing short of incredible. Whilst Metal Gear Solid 5 is undoubtedly the smoother and more immersive looking experience, you can't argue with those who believe that the aesthetics can be a little drab sometimes. The Witcher 3 is just an astoundingly varied world to become immersed in, with some of the most impressive vistas and landscapes I've personally seen since Skyrim. Where something like Dragon Age Inquisition feels as though it's just ticking off tropey fantasy environments to please the crowd, the Witchers just seem to blend seamlessly into one another, making the world feel genuinely, well, for lack of a better vocabulary, real. I find the biggest problem with open world RPGs to be pacing. Giving the player the freedom to totally ignore the main questline is incredibly risky, as they could lose all investment in the central narrative. The best games of the genre always contextualise everything, and The Witcher 3 is one of the best examples of this I've ever seen. Everything you do in the game feels relevant to the world. It's all wrapped up so well, considering the sheer scale of the world and its lore. It never gets boring either. The narrative and its characters are incredibly well written, I never felt my attention slipping because the game always had something equally interesting but entirely different for me to do elsewhere. Overall, I think CD Projekt Red delivered a superior game in comparison to its occasionally clumsy predecessors. You can tell that they bled for this game, you can feel the heart and soul of the team in here, and it's fucking beautiful to behold. So, admission. Outside of about half of 4, a little of the original and nearly all of Revengeance, does that one still count? I've never really gotten into the Metal Gear series. It's just something that's completely passed me by, despite my efforts to get on board over the years. So there's a beautiful irony perhaps in the fact that I think so highly of what is most likely to be the last in the series, by Kojima at least. Metal Gear Solid 5 is a fantastic game, and I honestly believe that it's the best gamey game of the year, maybe even one of the best gamey games of all time. It is the apex of stealth gameplay, the crescendo of what stealth games have been trying and, in my opinion, failing to achieve for the last 6 or so years, maintaining that incredibly delicate balance between challenging, varied, and most importantly, fun. A lot of people have claimed that there was zero need for the series to go open world. Though I lack experience with the franchise as a whole, I think that puts me in the unique position of looking at it without the accursed rose-tinted glasses. Because missions are scored on how you choose to tackle infiltration, whether it be running in there with an assault rifle plus rocket launcher combo or silenced tranquilizer pistol, you need to be able to experiment with the many different loadouts available to you. Aside from that, it just makes it all so much more interesting. The map isn't a clusterfuck of pointless objectives. Instead, the team have spent their time crafting a landscape that is utterly beautiful to behold and be a part of. Afghanistan is now one of my favourite environments in any game ever. Not just because it's beautifully bleak, but because it's so well laid out. There are genuinely many ways you can approach an objective in this game. My preferred tactic was to scope out bases from atop a canyon, pick off spotters with a height advantage from afar with my silenced sniper rifle, then sneak in, plant explosives in the appropriate areas, sneak out and then watch the fireworks from afar. To quote Stephen Burns from Video Gamer, it's the best Far Cry game that has ever and will ever be made. The reason it's not number 1 on this list, however, is simply down to its poor narrative. I was really looking forward to my first real, full-on look into Kojima's weird and wonderful imagination, and to an extent I got that in the gameplay, but certainly not in the story. The game starts with a confusing, overly long intro sequence that's pretty much all you get for a damn good while. When the plot does infrequently pick up, the story seems uninteresting and needlessly convoluted. I still think the depiction of Quiet is cowardly, to say the least. Look, I don't give a shit if you want women with big tits and an arse in your game, even if you're not willing to give them any character or reason to be there, but don't dress it up in some paper-thin plot detail that makes zero fucking sense. If you want breasts, stop being a coward and just put breasts in. Overall though, it's excellent, well deserving of the second spot. Like seriously, if you like games at all, you need to go out and get this, now. Okay, so, I get that this is a weird choice. To some, even those who've played and maybe even gotten something out of the beginner's guide, the idea of putting it in the number 1 spot for this year is ludicrous. Look at what I've already mentioned, for God's sake. How can a game with so very little player interaction take precedent over Bloodborne, The Witcher 3, Metal Gear for Christ's sake? Well, I can't really give you an answer to that. I can't even really pinpoint what it is that makes the beginner's guide such an important game to me to begin with. A lot of what makes a game for people is just how much fun it is, and that's totally fine. But for me, it's always been about the way a game can affect you in ways a book or a film can't. Possessing a character in the virtual representation of someone else's imagination. I think a lot of this comes from when I first played Bioshock and realised that the methods games use for telling a story are so much more nuanced and accessible than they are in almost every other medium. The beginner's guide reminded me so much of that. It's not a pleasant game, I cannot stress that enough. I found it to be one of the most disturbing, anxiety-inducing experiences I've ever had in a game, and it left me questioning aspects of my own personality and how we as a species perceive certain things as a whole. And that's it. For me, that's what makes it the best game of the year, and one of the most important games ever made. Its staying power, its ability to make you question the fabric of the self and the society we live in today. Some of you who are a little more familiar with my taste are probably shaking your heads in disbelief right now. Of course he'd pick the wankiest game of the year. How utterly predictable of a Journey fan to pick such a pretentious pile of twaddle. Well, yeah, you can think what you like. Regardless, it doesn't matter. I got into gaming because I believe it's a medium that stands out from the rest. You can illustrate ideals and concepts you just cannot do justice to in any other art form. These are the types of games that have always and will always stand out to me. I'm a Tool fan, for Christ's sake. That should tell you everything you need to know right there. So yeah, the Beginner's Guide just totally blew my head. Right off the shoulders. Game of the year. Bitches. Bitch fucks. You shits. Game of the year. Although, it's probably a tie between this and Metal Gear. If overall I had to pick, I'd probably say Metal Gear because it has more going for it, but at the same time the Beginner's Guide is just so entrenched in the things I love. Oh my goodness, I know my heart's singing out, soul, falling